and again, that money goes to the subcommittee, and a portion of that money will be used to give grants to the states to help them with appraisal management company regulation as well as appraiser regulation. The federal regulators, as I mentioned, are working on those regulations right now. The Dodd-Frank Act requires them to have those regulations written and out to the states by January 21st of next year. And then the states have 36 months to enact the regulations in their state. As I mentioned at the outset, the subcommittee, with approval by the FFIEC, does have the authority to give a state a 12-month extension if the state can demonstrate that they've made significant progress towards getting their AMC regulations in place. Recent activities going on at the subcommittee. The two biggest things we've been working on, in addition to our typical, our general duties, are in regard to a GAO report that was issued earlier this year and our revised policy statements. In 2000, as part of the Dodd-Frank Act, again, the GAO was required to conduct two studies, two appraisal-related studies. The first was a study of appraisal approaches, valuation models, and distribution channels, and also the impact of HVCC on appraisers in mortgage lending. That study was issued in 2011. The second study was a study on the ability of the appraisal subcommittee to monitor and enforce state certification and licensing requirements. That study took place throughout 2011, and they issued their findings in January of 2012. And there was lots of good information. If you haven't read it, I really encourage you to take a look at it. There's a lot of good information in there about what the subcommittee does, about the additional authority that's given to the subcommittee and responsibility by Dodd-Frank. And it culminated in 3 recommendations. Clarify the definitions used to categorize state compliance with Title 11. Right now, states can be categorized in one of 3 areas. They're either in substantial compliance with Title 11, not in substantial compliance with Title 11, or not in compliance. Not in substantial compliance is a huge category. All it takes is one area of the program to not be in compliance, and you end up in this big bucket of not in substantial compliance. So the GAO rightfully thought that should be narrowed down and be made more specific. We've done that in the policy statements that I'll talk about in a minute. We were to develop specific policies and procedures for monitoring the Federal Financial Institution Regulator appraisal requirements and develop specific criteria for assessing whether foundation grant activities are Title 11 related. We have developed and issued policies on the last 2 bullet points, so those are taken care of, and when the new policy statements are adopted, all 3 of the GAO recommendations will be addressed. I mentioned the new policy statements. Our policy statements are our guidance to the state appraiser regulatory programs on how to comply with Title 11. They're sort of like our advisory opinions, but they're more enforceable than the advisory opinions that are part of USPAP. It's the first total rewrite of the policy statements that have been in place since the early 90s. They've been amended, but they've never been completely rewritten in total, which they were this time. And largely that's because of a lot of changes in the industry, Dodd-Frank Act, USPAP, as well as recommendations from the GAO. The policy statements now will place states in one of several categories: excellent, good, needs improvement, not satisfactory, or poor. Poor is the one that the state really wants to avoid. That would be the same as being not in compliance right now, and that is if you're found to be poor or not in compliance, that's not the beginning of non-recognition proceeding, but it places you at the threshold. Our policy statements are in the Federal Register right now for comment. They were issued at the end of, they were posted at the end of August. You have until November 29th to provide comments. These, you can do it by email, you can do it by fax, you can do it by mail, but you have to do it you have to send your comments specifically through one of these portals, if you will, to get them registered and taken into consideration. In terms of our focus for next year, again, we'll be focusing on our general responsibilities of monitoring the state appraisal programs and the Appraisal Foundation, maintaining the National Registry. We'll also be working towards implementing the revised policy statements. Hopefully those will be approved in the first month or two of 2013. Hopefully we'll be implementing the appraisal complaint hotline next year, and we will also be working on designing the state grant program. And with that, that concludes my remarks, and I'll be happy to take questions after Mr. Bunton's done.